Good morning and welcome to the 5th episode of Coffee with Casey, the first of the new year. Happy 2023. I'm Casey Hicks, a shareholder here at Weltman and managing attorney at the Chicago office. I want to thank everyone for signing in to the session and being a part of this series so far. This is our 5th episode. We had 4 in 2022 and we're looking forward to having additional episodes this year. I also wanted to thank everyone that filled out how they heard about this webinar in the last survey and during registration. This helps us better promote our webinars and use our channels to the best of our ability. This morning, I am enjoying a delicious cup of dark matter coffee, which is called Unicorn Blood, a delicious espresso blend, which is definitely much needed this morning. So cheers to everyone out there, and please let us know what you're drinking in the question section.
I like that it's unicorn blood. That is a nice touch, Casey.
And our special guest this morning is Stefanie. So good morning to you, Stefanie, and thank you for being here today. Would you mind telling everyone a little bit about yourself and also what you're drinking this morning?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. I'm Stefanie. I am coming live from Indianapolis this morning. It is surprisingly in like the high 40s, so it's actually quite nice out and not as gray and kind of depressing as it normally can be in the Midwest. But I'm drinking Tinker Street coffee this morning. I brewed it here at my house, and it is a local coffee company here in Indianapolis, and I tend to really like it. So cheers to everybody. I love coffee. I made this about Stefanie because you can obviously go onto the Weltman website and read all about credentials and where I went to school and all that good stuff. But I decided, and I told Casey I wanted to be a little silly this morning and let you know some things that I enjoy outside of the office. So coffee. I love coffee and more coffee. My doctor thinks I drink too much coffee, and I disagree. And I put there a nice chart because I love cream with my coffee. And I love C4 is my preferred cream to coffee ratio.
I love that.
I've tried to teach my husband this when he brings me a cup of coffee. I'm like, no, more cream, please. Like, get the exact color right. Other things I enjoy that my husband makes fun of me for is a 30-minute comedy. I love 30-minute comedies. I find that it is just the perfect amount of time for laughter. And at the end of a really busy day, the last thing I want to really do is watch a kind of a dark and depressing show. I want to laugh because, after working all day, rushing to get the kids from school, making dinner, putting them to bed, I just want to have a good laugh before I go to bed. So I put a couple of my favorites. I actually watched an episode of Ghosts last night. That was pretty good. But Abbott Elementary, it probably makes me laugh the most, and Ted Lasso. I also love to read. I'm an avid fan of libraries. Public libraries are my jam. I love going to them. I love bringing my kids. I'm the weird person that still rents or borrows books from the library because I think it's really important and I love it. I have a huge sweet tooth. In fact, one of my favorite things to do when I go to a hearing is to find a local bakery. Sometimes I ask the judges for their favorite bakery recommendations. They're normally like, wait, what is this? But I have a massive sweet tooth. I love getting a chocolate croissant for the drive home. Just my thing. I also love to explore and travel. Those are my other 2 favorite things. I just got back last week from a trip to Phoenix and Sedona. So anytime I can get out of the office and travel is really nice. But thanks again for being here. And I hope you are enjoying your coffee, or if you're a tea drinker, or if you drink energy drink, whatever gets you going in the morning. But we've got some really cool topics that we're going to talk about today.
That's right. Thanks, Stefanie. And before we jump into the presentation, there's a few housekeeping matters that we have to go over. As a reminder, this is an interactive session, so please submit any questions that you have throughout the presentation through the question button in the control panel. Also, this webinar is being recorded, and at the conclusion of today's session, a link to the recording will be sent to all the attendees. Lastly, there will be a short survey on your screen at the conclusion of the event. Please take the survey and share your feedback. We greatly appreciate hearing your opinions on our webinars. And finally, before we get started, we have to do the webinar legal notice. This seminar presentation will provide information concerning potential legal issues, concepts, factual situations, and information. This seminar and the material provided is not a substitute for legal advice from qualified counsel on any matter, including similar or exact factual scenarios that may be provided or proposed. This presentation is not created or designed to address the unique facts and circumstances that may arise in any specific instance, and you should not and are not authorized to rely on this content as a source of legal advice. I advise you to seek competent legal advice on these topics. This seminar or seminar material does not create an attorney-client relationship between you or the law firm of Weltman, Weinberg, and Reese. And with that, I'm going to kick it over to Stefanie, and we're going to get it right into the presentation.
Perfect, thanks, Casey. So today's topic is third-party impossession. So before we get into the different types of third parties, we have to do our homework. We have to decide who has possession, because we want to know who has our collateral. Because someone else besides the borrower has now taken it. It could be a storage facility, maybe a repair shop, mechanic, or it could be a government entity. We see a lot of those, and we'll talk about those forfeiture impound cases due to criminal matters. So we need to decide who has our collateral. Is the party in possession of a third party, and more importantly, what's their name and address? Because if we're going to eventually file a replevin action against them, we're going to need that information. So first thing first, who has it? And if we don't know, then we need to do our homework. We need to do some detective work. I love a good Google search, looking at the Secretary of State website, doing a deep delve, trying to figure out, is this garage maybe connected to this entity? We need to know who has it. That way, when we're ready to go with our replevin action, we can get that filed really quickly, and we can name the right parties. That way, when we're sending our sheriff out, we can get the right address, the right party to get our collateral back.
We do have a question, Stefanie. When doing this investigative work, do you use like a private process server or an outside agency, or do you do that investigative work within Weltman?
So I usually do a little bit of both. I am actually, I just was working with a client yesterday, having their repo agent actually go out, make some kind of drive-bys, as I like to call them, trying to figure out if they could see anything. I'm doing some in-house skipping, and then I'm also doing my own investigative work too. I love a good skip trace. I love finding people. I love Facebook. I think you can find lots of information on it. People love to tell you all about themselves on social media. It's sometimes a great resource. If I can find a picture of the car that maybe they've posted, I can then match it to Google, figure out where it is. Sometimes we can then provide that to our repo agent to go and get and do that drive-by. I've also done some drive-bys by myself if it's something nearby. I'm trying to get some information. Those are a little exciting, I'm not gonna lie. Gonna go to the next slide, Casey.
Oh yeah, sorry. I thought I clicked it. Sorry. There we go.
Oh, you do that. There it is. Okay, so just going back up of that, where's the vehicle? If we are going to file a replevin action, we have to have an address. We have to have an address to make sure that we know where to send out our sheriff, or if we're going to send a process server out, one to serve, but then also once we do get that order of replevin, the writ, we're going to have to send our sheriff out to go and try to get the collateral back. So we're going to have a good address. Again, going back, figuring out where the car is. We can have sometimes multiple locations where we want to send the sheriff to, but if we can try to get our repo agent to do some research or do those drive-bys, put on your detective hat, that way we can at least have a better idea of where our car is located. All right, and then before we get started, we got to get our ducks in a row too. So once we know where our car is, who has it, most importantly, let's go back to our documentation and just make sure we've got all of that ready to go. Because if we are going to file a replevin action, we're going to need all of this information. So let's look at our evidence of debt and our lien. So let's get a copy of our contract and security agreement. Usually it's going to be your note or your retail installment contract. Let's make sure that your collateral is properly titled, or your lien is titled on that, notated on the title. Sorry, haven't had enough coffee, clearly. And then also let's go back to the reason for default. Look at your loan documents. Typically when your collateral goes into the hands of a third party, you're not receiving payments. That's going to be an automatic default. But most notes will also have that allowing the property to go into the hands of a third party or be confiscated. Impounded is also a default. So just take a look at the default language in your note. You can also send it over to us. Always glad to look at it. It's typically a pretty easy thing to spot. I can go to the next slide.
And we did have another question come in before we go on to the next slide. If your consumer is a renter, do you have to name the landlord? And I'm assuming a replevin action. It doesn't say that, but that's what I'm assuming the question means.
I'm sorry, you kind of cut out. If the consumer is a renter?
Is a renter, do you
No,
have
you're fine.
to?
I just want to make sure I understood the question.
If the consumer is a renter, do you have to name the landlord?
It is helpful to name the landlord because if we have to go onto the property and send our sheriff out there, we're going to need to give the landlord a heads up that we're coming. So it is always helpful to name the landlord in those actions. That way that they know we're coming. And sometimes they can be really helpful too. They can let us in, which is always really nice, right? Sometimes people are, helpful in that respect. And always letting them know that we're coming, especially if it's a garage and we need to break a lock and get the order for that. It's nice to let the landlord know and serve them with that notice. So going back, also getting the valuation of your collateral. This is going to be required for the bond amount. So once we file that replevin and we file a motion for immediate possession, we're going to need to post a bond. So we're going to need to know the collateral's value. Also important is, with all of this to keep in mind, is what is the value of the collateral? Is this even worth it? What are we going after here? What's the present condition? The other day I had a client want to get a car out of a garage, and I asked what the condition of the car is, and it's wrecked. And I said, well, do we want the car back? Like, what are we going to do with this car? What's the value of it? If it's completely wrecked, it's not roadworthy, we can't take it on the road. We're going to have to recondition it to even sell it, or sell it as is. What are we going to get back from this? Is the cost of all of this and the storage fees going to be more than what the value of the collateral is? Because remember, at the end of the day, we can always go back to the note, and we can always just sue on the note. And that sometimes is going to be a better and more efficient option, I would say, for our clients than going after these worthless pieces of collateral that just don't have any more value anymore, simply because they're wrecked or because of whatever condition they might be in. And you go to the next slide. All right, so our first third party in possession is a repair shop. I would say this is always pretty common. The borrower takes the car in. My favorite is when the borrower has not had an oil change ever. I've had multiple of those. I'm like, how do you not get your oil changed? I feel like that's my dad telling me at 16, like, you gotta change your oil, make sure. And I'm actually pretty anal about that. But that seems to be a common occurrence for some of our borrowers here. So borrower takes the car into the repair shop and then never comes back to pick it up. Doesn't call, the repair shop's calling, the borrower is not answering, they're not paying. So the car's at the repair shop. And usually it's because the borrower can't pay. And typically at this point, the borrower is not paying you either. They've stopped paying, so they're in default. So the repair shop's going to then contact you as the lien holder. And they're going to be looking for payment and also to get this car out of their shop because they don't want it anymore, taking up space. So things to look for. Did the repair shop improve the value of the property? We're going to want to send somebody out to inspect the work that's been performed to make sure that what they've said is what they did and that it was done well. So let's send a professional out to take a look at it. make sure that they actually added value, because if they did, then they might have a claim for unjust enrichment here, and they are going to be owed something. Bogus claims, this was a question that came in prior to today's webinar. Sometimes we do see this where the borrower maybe works for the repair shop, or maybe it's his uncle's repair shop. That's, again, putting on our detective hats, doing some research. Do they have the same last names? Is this a small town? Maybe asking around, this looks kind of shady. And then also checking the dockets. Those are sometimes a source of valuable information. And in Indiana, it's really nice because we have a unified docket, so I can search one repair shop and I can find all of their cases. So let's see if they have filed multiple actions to strip liens. That's usually going to give me a telltale sign of, this might be a money-making practice for them, or if maybe they've only had one or two, okay, that might be something that this is actually more legit. And it definitely could be. So typically, let's look at those to make sure that the claim's actually valid, and that the repairs were reasonable, and that they actually did the repair work and they did it well. So the most common question with this is that the state's notice. These are, again, very state specific. So once the repair shop has done work on the car, they've made multiple calls to the borrower is not picking up, is not paying for this car, they're going to come back to you to look for payment. They're going to give you notice then, and that's going to depend on state law, how much time that you have before they can go in and essentially strip your lien, sell this car, and pay themselves off. Your lien is typically going to be superior to a repair shop lien, meaning that you're going to get paid first. But again, that's state specific, and it's going to depend on a variety of did the borrower request these repairs or storage fees? That's all going to be questions that you're going to need to talk to one of us to make sure, again, that this is valid and reasonable. So hand in hand with this is storage liens. Typically, once we see repair fees or repair requests, we're going to see storage fees as well. So again, this is going to depend. Indiana has two statutes which kind of go hand in hand. It's going to depend on how the storage came about. Was this an abandoned vehicle that got towed to a lot and our borrower didn't request it? Or is this our borrower dropped the car off at a repair shop. The repair shop has now been storing the vehicle because the borrower essentially requested it. So it's going to depend on that. And here in Indiana, those facts will then lead to which statute applies, and then essentially the maximum storage fees that may be charged. And again, the maximum storage fees are all going to be very state specific. So questions to look at, was it impounded by the police? And then was any value added, meaning that, did this go hand in hand with repairs? And then also something to look at, was this reasonable? There is a case about 10 years ago here in Indiana where the repair shop the impound lot stored the vehicle in a heated garage. When the court order from the judge was actually just an outdoor garage at the cheapest storage fee possible. So that was a big hot topic in that case because the garage clearly was trying to maximize their fees there and charge unreasonable fees. So take a look at that. We don't need a heated garage. It sounds really nice. We don't need it. We're tough, right?
Really interesting.
Native Midwestern here. We're tough. We love winter. But make sure it's reasonable.
We did have a couple questions that came in, Stefanie. So first one is, are repair shops allowed to charge storage to lien holders without notice?
So they could charge storage. They're eventually going to have to give you notice, and that's all going to go back to state law, is how much notice they're going to have to give you and what the timelines for that is. Typically, it's going to be so many days. They're going to have to give you notice that essentially they've been storing this vehicle, they've made the repairs, borrower has not come back to claim the vehicle and pay, and now they want you to come pay this to get it off their lot. That's usually what we see the most common. Or if it's a police hold, they'll have storage fees as well. So they will have to eventually give you notice. Again, that's going to go back to state law, and always call us. Once you get that notice, don't delay. That's important. Don't delay, because the time is ticking, and the time is fast. These shops can file their lien and get the title stripped pretty quick. So once you get a notice, call, pick up the phone and call, start the process, because we don't want to dilly-dally here, because the last thing I want is a call on a Friday afternoon, and the sale is set for Monday, and there's really not much we can do to get somebody out to actually inspect and to really get going on this process. So please call. Were there more questions, Casey?
Yeah, next question. If there is a piece of collateral at a repair shop and the loan is in default, can the lien holder pay the bill and take the vehicle for repossession from the repair shop before it is picked up from by the borrower?
Sorry, could you repeat that? You cut out and in and out.
Yeah.
I heard.
It's kind of a long question too. It's kind of a long question. If there's a piece of collateral at a
repair, skipping ahead in the presentation.
Oh, sorry. If we have a piece of collateral at a repair shop and the loan is in default, do we have rights to pay the bill and take the vehicle for repossession from the repair shop before the vehicle is picked up by the borrower?
Oh, absolutely. You can pick it up. One thing to think about though is that if the borrower hasn't picked it up and you've not made contact, you might need a right to cure. Make sure you're not in a cure state. Yeah, absolutely pick it up. Give your borrower the notices. Apply those fees to the balance of the loan, and here we go. Sell that vehicle. That's
that was it. And I think
business, right?
Right. Do I have you on the right slide?
Perfect. Now I'm back on. Yep. So these are sometimes I think sort of fun cases, is the impound and forfeiture cases. So this is when your law enforcement agency seizes or impounds a vehicle. Most states have some sort of statute where the government agency can essentially forfeit the car once you've had so many DUIs. So let's say we've had 2 DUIs in 5 years. That's going to be an automatic forfeiture under the law, and then you're going to forfeit your car to the state. So lovely. I once had a forfeiture hearing where the borrower had, I think it was his 10th DUI in like 5 years, and we were taking that car. We were getting the car back. And I just remember the judge said, why don't you sober up, go to the grocery store on the bus now, because you're not gonna have a car, grab your beer, come home, and then drink your beer at home. That would be a really great alternative to this, and I love that. But also the vehicle is used in a commission of a crime. So recently it wasn't quite a forfeiture case, that it was actually our borrower left the car abandoned on the side of the road, had actually crashed the car, and then there was some elements of criminality left in the car, and then he wandered off into the woods. The police obviously confiscated the car, had a police hold on it, and so we had to file a motion to intervene in the criminal case to get the car back. And sometimes on these cases, because we're dealing with the criminal courts and criminal judges, sometimes if they don't see this a lot, sometimes they have lots of questions. So in that case, the judge actually had me come to court and actually had me explain some of this to him, some of the forfeiture laws. And then he granted our motion to intervene and to release the police hold. But sometimes we have to do that. So again, make sure you're watching for those notices, because then we're gonna have to file our motion to intervene within the criminal case to get our car back as the lien holder. Typically, just part of the motion to intervene is we're going to need an affidavit to show what rights that we have, that we are the titled holder of this the vehicle, that our security interest is the vehicle, and that the debtor obviously has breached the agreement, either non-payment or now having a government agency seize our car is almost always a default under the note. And then just importantly, you can't sell to the borrower or any family member. So if you are placing the vehicle then for a public sale, we have to make sure that we have essentially, we're not selling it to the borrower or any family member of the borrower. So we have to be careful with our language that goes into those sale notices. And sometimes we can have the courts help us with a court order that we can attach to our notice so that they can't get it back. Sorry.
And one question before we go on to the next slide. What drives the right to cure law? The title, the state the borrower's mailing address is in, or the location of the collateral?
So that's a great question. So the right to cure is typically going to be, I'd say mixed. It is going to be, you know, where your car is and where your borrower is, because we're going to have to give the most protection we can based on that state. And the state might have an interest in it. So let's say our cars here in Indiana, maybe our consumers in Ohio. Well, Ohio might have and does have more consumer protections that apply than Indiana does. So we're going to have sort of a conflict of law analysis, and I will usually ask questions like, you know, where was the contract entered into? You know, was the car mostly in Ohio and then just brought over to Indiana randomly? You know, where was most of this contract performed? Is the borrower still in Ohio? That might be a question where we might need to do some skip tracing just to make sure we have a good address. And we're usually going to go with the state that might provide the most protections. That way we're giving our consumer the utmost protections under the law. You know, that's usually my route to go is that approach. But it sometimes can be multiple parts, and we're going to have to do an analysis. And then the last third party in possession is just an individual. Usually we see these with deceased matters. So grandson takes the grandma's car and isn't paying, and that's when we're going to need to file a replevant action for a third party in possession and go after the possession only. Usually this is when family members take the car, or you know, Joe Schmo gets the car. We have those situations too where our borrower likes to give away the car, and suddenly we're going to have to go after Joe Schmo for the car. So those are going to be our replevant actions for third party in possession, and we'll file those just for the possession only. So some questions that came in prior to today's presentation. So first one, what are the credit union's rights when the member returns the vehicle to the dealer and the dealer refuses to give the vehicle to the credit union? Well, the dealer is going to be named in our lovely replevant action, and they can hire an attorney, and then their attorney can talk to me, and we're going to come and grab that car. So yeah, we're going to name the dealer in our replevant action for possession, and then the judge can decide that action essentially. If we have the right to possession based under our note and our security interests, then the dealer really has no rights to it. What recourse does a lender have when they are wiped out from the title by a third party or repair shop? Remember, always go back on your note. We can always sue as long as our debtor hasn't filed bankruptcy. We can always sue on the terms of the note, file a deficiency action. Do that almost every day here at Weltman. So always go back to the terms of the note. We can definitely sue on that balance. So that's essentially your recourse there. If we can't get to the car, then we're going to sue on the note only. Casey, were there any more questions that came in?
There were a few. Unfortunately, we're almost up at our time. So here, for everyone out there that submitted questions, thank you so much. Either Stefanie or I will reach out to you after the webinar to answer the questions that you submitted. We really appreciate all of you submitting questions today during today's webinar. Stefanie and I's contact information is here as well. We really appreciate you taking the time to attend today and to submit your questions. I hope that you found today's presentation informative. I'm happy to announce we will be moving forward with episode 6. That will be on Thursday, May 4th. So go ahead and mark your calendars now, and we'll send out registration details shortly. As a reminder, a short survey will pop up on your screen when the webinar ends. Please share your feedback. Let us know any future topics you would like to see us discuss. And thanks again for attending today, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you all. Thanks, Casey.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.